Science Tuesdays. I have not given a Science Tuesdays lesson in a while. This data blows my mind. So there's a woman named Ellen Langer who is a Harvard, have you heard of her? Harvard psychologist. And she's been doing this research for 35 years. And it's all quantifiably proven. Yet again, we will see something tangible and real through science applied in an acting context. Well, I'm putting it in an acting context, but anyway, so her research has borne out, she does mindfulness. Mindfulness. That word, right there. It's such a beautiful word. And one of the things that she says is most people aren't there, and they're not there to know that they're not there. Amazing. That's called mindlessness. And obviously, so much of what you're learning in the work is that you've got to be there. You've got to be present. You've got to be available. I'll come back to that in a second. But one of the things that I think is really interesting is she doesn't work with mindfulness from the way that I've been teaching for 15 years now. It has all come from, to me, universal principles and meditation-based mindfulness, which is you do a practice, like any kind of practice, like going to the gym or whatever, and then you go out in the world, in this case in meditation, and the results of that practice show up. Meaning, and this is all quantifiable, people who meditate, which is a practice of mindfulness, in your own life you become access to greater creativity, you're more joyful, you're more freely expressed, so that's been proven. Her mindfulness is experienced and researched in a different way. Hers is not through meditation. Hers is simply by recognizing when you're not mindful. And how you become mindful is what she uses this term called noticing things. Just noticing things. Noticing things that we take for granted on a daily basis. It can be experiences, it can be people, it can be places, and then when you do, your view of the world changes. And certainly with people, if you just, and maybe we'll do this little exercise at the end of this lesson, if you just notice something different about somebody, it creates a change in you and also in them, even if it's ever so subtly, and yet it's tangible. So that also creates presence, although she doesn't use that word. And over 35 years in her studies, this area of mindfulness, it has found measurable benefits to creativity, see a correlation here? Competence, psychological well-being, and physical health. So here's the last part. This experiment, she's done many, many experiments, but this experiment blows my mind because it's about creatives. So she's done this experiment with a control group of a symphony orchestra musicians, okay? And it's interesting because a lot of orchestra players get bored because they're playing the same classical music over and over again, and it has an inherent structure and form that they can't deviate from. So it's not like jazz, right? So you can't be doing a classical piece, you can't just like make something up and riff on it, right? So they're trained to do things properly or correctly. Now, how do we correlate that to acting? Just think about it. You're doing a long Broadway show. 8 shows a week, and you're constantly having to say the lines the same way. Or you're doing your 100th take of something in a scene, or in a movie, and you're in your head because you're coming to the lines the same way. So I'm using that as sort of the correlation of some of the challenges actors face with the structure of lines. Okay, so she has a control group, which is the group of orchestra players that she says, I want you to replicate the best performance you've had of this classical piece that they used in the study. I just want you to replicate that as best you can, okay? And then she uses the mindful group, and she says to them, they're allowed to create something new in very subtle ways. Now, like I said, it has to be subtle because there can't be a cymbal crash where there isn't one supposed to be annotated. But it's just very subtle differences in the experience and in the playing of the music. That is always the same. Okay, guess what the research has borne out? It blows my mind. 2 things. Well, the first one is obvious. The musicians who played mindfully had a really rad, fun time. Much more than the control group. And then this is the other data that blows my mind. They had people listen to the recordings. It wasn't even live. Can you imagine? It wasn't even live. It was a recorded performance they had people listen to who did not know that there was a control group versus a mindfulness group. listening to both recordings, overwhelmingly, what did people choose? They chose the people who performed mindfully. And she says this, it blows my mind. People could actually hear the musician's consciousness. It leaves footprints in what we do. This is staggering. So you're listening to something and something sounds ever so just subtly different. You don't even know what it is. Something more alive, something more visceral, something more tangible, something ephemeral, and yet you, the person listening, you, if you're a person watching a movie or a play, seeing something different in performance. Well, what is that? That's all mindfulness based. That's what I teach. It's called presence. If we want to go deeper, because we take presence out into the world, that becomes your consciousness starts to change. That there's data that supports that. It sort of begs the question, why aren't we becoming more mindful all the time? Well, we can be. That's what the work is all about. And also, I think it's so interesting because it also suggests it's so simple. To me, acting, what I've been saying for 15 years, longer than that, but acting is so simple. This also shows that, but it's so simple, that doesn't mean that it's easy. But simplicity I have found in life and in this kind of work is, as I've gotten older, the simplest explanation for things is generally the answer. So I just want us to I just want to read this again because I love it. People could actually hear people's consciousness. It leaves footprints in what we do. So you guys, I guess the benediction again is how do we become more available and present to the moment in all ways, not just in acting, in your auditioning, on set, in a play, on stage, in life. Yesterday I was on the phone with somebody and I don't know, I was just being challenged and I really wasn't, it was like somebody who had to come and fix something and it was a total stranger but they had to organize a schedule and I could feel myself not really being present to it. And I know when I hung up, I knew energetically, I got that she was feeling that I wasn't really feeling it. And I was like, there was no reason for me not to be fully present in that conversation with her. Why was I ticked off? Why was I annoyed? Why was I pissy? It had nothing to do with her. The poor girl was getting the brunt of my non-mindfulness. So you use it always as a distinction. I didn't beat myself up about it. I use it as, oh, I could have done better. I could have done better. I could have been with somebody better. So when you do, you start to leave a footprint. A footprint that makes a difference. A footprint that changes people's lives. A footprint that makes you feel empowered. You become more creative and joyful and healthy. Psychologically not distracted by all the mind chatter. So I want you to just turn to the person next to you right now. Everybody turn to the person next to you. Don't say anything. Just look. Just look. Come here, you can do it to me, you see? And I want you to just notice 5 things about this person. And if you all don't have a partner, then do one person and then turn to the other person. Notice 5 things about them. That you don't even know this person. You may never notice them before. Just notice it. Just notice it. Yeah.
We're like...
Okay, and what did that do? That got all of you present. Okay, that's what we want to continue working with all the time. Yes. You noticed. Well, I didn't do it. The hairdresser was like, let's go blonde. Don't shame me about my blonde hair. Go sit down. I hope you got that on tape. That will be the closer of that.